Welcome to the Inner Compass podcast show. I am your host, Jackson Ogo, and thank you for joining us on episode 6 of the Inner Compass podcast show. In this episode, we will be discussing the power of forgiveness. What is the difference between forgiving someone and excusing their behavior? How does holding on to resentment affect our mental and emotional well being? What part of our identity shifts when we choose to forgive? And finally, what daily practices can help us move towards forgiveness? The broken vase. When Sarah was 10, her best friend Lonnie knocked over her grandmother's vase, an heirloom Sarah wasn't supposed to touch, let alone share. It shattered into dozens of tiny pieces on the kitchen floor. I didn't mean to, Lonnie said quickly. It was an accident. Sarah wanted to scream, but something in her chest told her to stay quiet. She swallowed the anger and said, "It's fine," but it wasn't. Years later, Sarah found herself thinking about that vase more than she expected. Not because of what it was worth, but because she realized she never really forgiven Lonnie for what she had done. She simply excused it to avoid conflict. She silenced her own feelings. Forgiveness, Sarah learned, doesn't mean pretending the harm didn't happen. It means acknowledging it fully, the pain, the impact, and still choosing to let go of the anger. Not to free the other person, but to free herself. Excusing the harm denies its weight. Forgiveness honors the truth and then releases its grip. What is the difference between forgiving someone and excusing their behavior? The difference between forgiving someone and excusing their behavior lies in acknowledgement and accountability. Imagine someone cuts you with a knife. Excusing is like saying it wasn't that deep and slapping a bandage on without cleaning the wound. You pretend it's fine, but the injury festers underneath. You never fully address the pain. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is like saying, "Yes, I was hurt. This matters." You clean the wound, acknowledge the pain, and choose to heal, even if the sear remains. You may never forget what happened, but you stop carrying the infection of resentment. Forgiveness means you recognize that harm was done. You feel the impact, and you still choose to release the burden of anger or resentment for your own peace and healing. It doesn't mean you pretend it didn't happen or let the other person off the hook. Excusing means minimizing or denying the harm. It's saying it wasn't that bad or they didn't mean it, even when it was hurtful. Excusing bypasses accountability to avoid discomfort or confrontation. In short, forgiveness equals accountability plus release. Excusing equals avoidance plus dismissal. Forgiveness heals, excusing hides. Forgiveness honors your experience, excusing asks you to ignore it. How does holding on to resentment affect our mental and emotional well being? Resentment is like drinking poison and hoping someone else gets sick. Letting go isn't about them, it's about how you set yourself free. Holding on to resentment is like carrying a backpack full of rocks. It gets heavier the longer you hold on, even if you've forgotten why you picked it up in the first place. Mentally, resentment can fuel negative thought loops, making it hard to focus or move forward, distort perceptions, causing you to view people and situations through a lens of past hurt, and lead to chronic stress, anxiety, or even depression. Emotionally, resentment can drain your energy and joy, keep you stuck in the past, unable to be fully present, or erode self worth and peace by clinging to the identity of someone who was wronged. Resentment doesn't protect you from pain, it prolongs it. Letting go isn't about condoning what happened, it's about choosing your freedom over your bitterness. The irony is that while resentment often feels like control, it actually robs us of it. It's like dragging a heavy anchor through life. You can still move, but everything takes more effort and joy becomes harder to access. Forgiveness, on the other hand, isn't about excusing the pain, it's about releasing its grip or control over you. It allows you to say, "What happened hurt, it mattered, but I choose to not carry it anymore. Here's a few daily affirmations to help you stay grounded in the importance of forgiveness and emotional release. I release the weight of resentment and choose peace. I honor my pain, but will not let it define me. I forgive not to forget the past, but to free myself from its grip. I am not defined by my wounds. I am shaped by how I choose to heal. I give myself permission to move forward with peace in my heart. I trust that in letting go, I can make room for something greater. What part of our identity shifts when we choose to forgive? When we choose to forgive, the part of our identity that shifts is the part tied to the one who was hurt, the story of the victim, the misunderstood, the betrayed, or the rejected. We'll start to notice several layers of our identity begin to shift emotionally, psychologically, morally, and even socially. It becomes less about the other person and more about who you're becoming through the act of letting go. Here's a few key areas that will experience growth when we choose to forgive. From wounded to whole. Instead of identifying with the pain that someone caused, we begin to see ourselves as someone who can heal, grow, and move forward. Our identity becomes more rooted in resilience than in hurt. We move from why did this happen to me to what can I learn from this? This shift marks a critical development milestone, transforming pain into wisdom. From reactive to empowerment. When we carry hurt or resentment, we often react from a place of emotional defense or pain. Choosing to forgive represents a shift towards living with intention. We're no longer letting someone else's action dictate our moods, choices, or growth. This builds emotional maturity and strengthens our ability to respond, not just react to life. From closed to open hearted. When we forgive, we soften. We become more open to connection, compassion, and presence. The version of us that was armored in pain begins to trust life again. We're forced to examine our values, boundaries, and emotional triggers. It invites deep self reflection. What kind of person do we want to be when we're hurt? How much control do we give others over our peace? By exploring these questions, our self awareness grows, and with it, our ability to navigate future challenges. And finally, from the past to the present. Forgiveness shifts our identity from someone stuck in a story to someone living in the now. You're no longer defined by what happened, you're defined by what you're choosing now. We reclaim our time, our mental clarity, and our emotional space. Instead of replaying the offense in our minds, we free up energy to focus on our present day goals, relationships, and passions. In essence, forgiveness doesn't just free the other person, it frees you to become someone lighter, wiser, and more aligned with who you truly are. Forgiving is not just an act, it's an identity transformation. It's a movement away from a fixed identity formed around hurt towards a more fluid identity capable of compassion, growth, and renewal. What is one small thing we can let go of today to support our growth? One small but powerful thing we can let go of today is the need to have it all figured out. We often carry an invisible pressure to know the plan, to have answers, certainty, and a clear path forward. This pressure can quietly strangle our creativity, peace, and willingness to take risks. But what if not knowing isn't failure? What if it's freedom? When we release the need to have it all figured out, we give ourselves permission to learn as we go, change directions without shame or guilt, and be human. Growth doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from trusting ourselves to take one step, then another, even in the dark. Here are some reflective questions to help you stay present and connect to your emotions as you explore the process of forgiveness. Where in your life are you waiting to feel ready before moving forward? What is one small step you could take, even if you don't have the full plan? What does not knowing make you feel, and what might it make possible instead? Thank you for joining me today on this journey through the power of forgiveness. We explore how forgiveness is not about excusing harm, but honoring our truth, releasing resentment, and reclaiming our peace. It's not always easy, but it's always powerful. Remember, forgiveness isn't something you do for others, it's something you choose for yourself to lighten your emotional load, to shift from pain to empowerment, and to move from surviving to healing. As you go about your day, ask yourself, what am I holding on to that no longer serves me? And what might become possible if I let it go? If this episode spoke to you, I encourage you to revisit the affirmations and reflection questions we shared. You don't need to rush your process. Just begin where you are with compassion and honesty. Join us on the next episode where we explore how to overcome fear and self doubt and step into your confidence with clarity and courage. Until next time, my friends, take care of your heart, honor your healing, and keep following your inner compass. Thank you.